Welcome to Iona Speaks about soaring courageously, where I take you through an inspiring journey of courage and resilience through empowering conversations with amazing guests. In this podcast, I share my personal story of overcoming adversity and embracing the beautiful masterpiece of creation. Through a series of personal anecdotes, insightful reflections, and awe-inspiring conversations, there is an emphasis on the significance of self-belief with the willingness to step outside of our comfort zones. As someone who has faced numerous challenges, I know firsthand the importance of rising above fears and limitations, where I became a #1 best-selling author. My story underscores that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the determination to move forward despite of it. So join me for conversations that are riveting, aiming to inspire you to spread your wings and soar towards your dreams with unwavering conviction. Welcome to another episode of Iona Speaks about soaring courageously. And I'm your host and your co-producer, Iona R. Rudisil. And as a life and health coach, I actually love that I'm able to partner with others on their sacred journey to wellness. So I'm excited to have with me Christy Venable, who is CEO and founder of the Smile Therapy Services. And so I'm excited to welcome you, Christy, to this episode of Soaring Courageously.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and definitely looking forward to this conversation.
So here's some things that we know about Christy. Christy helps organizations transform their leaders into people-first leaders who foster psychological safety, resilience, and high-performing teams. Through her engaging and actionable trainings, Christy equips leaders with the skills to communicate effectively, and she sets healthy boundaries, and she navigates difficult conversations, challenging conversations, and she also supports employees in their well-being, which is so important. Christy's approach blends emotional intelligence, workplace wellness, and leadership development to create a culture where employees feel valued, and not just feel valued, but they also feel motivated and empowered to succeed. So, as she's soaring courageously, she is building teams, and she wants us to do it together. So let's build that leadership team. What else would you like our audience of thriving men and women who have experienced and maybe don't know that they are experiencing burnout to know about you?
Yeah. So, I am a licensed professional counselor by trade. So I'm a therapist and really focused and on a mission to change how especially workplaces view and respond to mental health and wellness. I think for so long we have had a reactionary approach and have seen it as a soft skill that is not necessarily necessary, but optional. And so we have to really change that. And so that's really what I'm on a mission to do. Working with leaders and organizations to change from the top down, right? Because we know that culture is built from the top. And that's something that many people have to realize. We build our culture from the top, not from the bottom. And so if we can really transform our leaders and how they lead and how they approach workplace culture, then we can change our workplace cultures and make them more psychologically safe. And so, I say I'm a corporate wellness strategist, really helping companies to strategize on the best way to be preventative in their approach for their employees. And working with executives, doing some executive wellness coaching. Because, what we also find is that most of the times the leaders are burnt out. And because of that, they are kind of, it's trickling down to the employees on, how they are responding to them or how they are acting. So I'm really, hoping to be able to help the leaders even identify within themselves that they need help, and, that they will actually go get the help that they need.
Yeah. You know what? You said so much greatness in there. One of the things I wanted to highlight is you were talking about going into the head. And we know that when the head is suffering, when the head is not aligned, when the head is feeling exhausted or out of step or, not operating in their best effectiveness, then the whole body impacts. Think about our whole body right now. So if we're having a headache or there's sinus situations or allergies, it basically just goes down to the body. And one of the things, being a survivor of traumatic brain injury, I know that everything that I do is going to impact and affect my body.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love that I learned in a certification course that I've been taking with IIN, the Institute of Integrated Nutrition, is about the vagus nerve.
Yep.
And I know you as a therapist, you as a licensed practitioner, understand the importance of the vagus nerve. And I mean, all of our nerves, but how it interacts with that. So I love how you said that when you go into an organization that you want it to be psychologically safe. You want it to be healthy. You want it to be well. And in order to do that, you need to work with all of those who are in management, those who are in executive leadership positions, those who might feel unseen, those who might feel that they have to keep the ball rolling and they have to keep things moving. And so they're not taking a lot of stock in their own health. And I'm saying this because I am one of those individuals.
Yeah.
I was in leadership positions. I was in those spaces. And I understand that, which is why my heart and my spirit is drawn now to working with those leaders. So I love how you mentioned the mental health. And you know that it's not personal, but it is something that goes into professional, which I've also heard you've spoken about in other platforms. So can you break that down a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I mean, you have to realize that workplaces are just people. And when we realize that, we will approach it differently, right? We're people with our own mental health, with our own set of traumas, with our own past experiences, with our own family life, right? And if you have a family, then you have probably drama, and with our own set of social circles. And so we come with everything, right? With all of our baggage. And so, how do you then take that into account when you are leading a group of people with different personalities, different past experiences, and help each one where they are? And so, really thinking about that, it's always going to be a intersection of personal and professional, because we show up personally in a professional setting. And so we can't help but to interlock. So how do we then make sure that, yes, work is important? However, we know the studies have shown, there's numerous studies that says if a person is not mentally well, they don't have the capacity, they're not going to be as productive. You're going to have, if not absenteeism, presenteeism, meaning they're there but they're not working.
Right.
Right. And so, or you also or may have someone, because they're in a bad space, they may come with a bad attitude, and then that culture then goes down, right? And they may be the cause of your culture not being psychologically safe.
Right.
And so how do you really integrate that inside of the workplace? Well, we have to be preventative. That's, and that's really the approach that we're taking at Smile to help corporations see that no longer can we rely on EAP for everything. Because people say, oh, just, well, we have an EAP, but that's, who actually uses it? Because when people need it, they don't have the capacity to get through to EAP, right? They don't have that capacity to do all the steps necessary. So how about we put things in place so that they can get the help that they need before they even get to that place of burnout? So that's really the goal.
Yeah, that's wonderful because you're talking about the how to. Because we can have resources, we can have those offerings, but if we don't know how to get to those offerings, if we don't
Exactly.
recognize that we need those offerings within ourselves, then we won't even reach out and take advantage of those offerings.
Exactly. And some people may know they need them, but you also have to remember that mental health still has a huge stigma. And so if I think that me reaching out to, and then depending on the culture, if this is not a safe culture, then I may think that me reaching out may impact me negatively in the workplace. And so I
Yeah.
won't reach out.
Exactly, exactly. And when you do reach out, what I've also seen is that they might be targeted, which of course is not something that we want to recognize. Yet you have to understand that it is a realization.
It is.
Sometimes people are targeted because they've reached out, and it's made them feel that they are less capable and that they aren't able to do their job when it really is something that just happens. As I've recognized it and I've lived through it, I see that burnout is not something that is negative anymore. I used to see it as a stigma, but it's not. I see it as power. So I consider myself a transformer of burnout into power because of the fact that once we recognize and we acknowledge that it's there, it opens the door to so many opportunities, and it allows us to become aligned with the calling and the purpose in the way that we need to be aligned with it, and so that we can have a balance in our multidimensional health. So our health is not just emotional, our health is not just mental,
Yep.
but there are spiritual pieces,
Yep.
there are physical pieces, there are relational pieces, economical pieces, and intellectual pieces. And I love how when you speak at different trainings that you have, that you bring out, even though it might not be, couched in the word of multidimensional health, but you bring out the different pieces and facets of health. And
Yeah.
so I'd love to hear your story. What is your story? What is it that caused you to come into this place that you're in now? And how did that path make you the woman that you are
Yeah.
today, the executive that you are today?
Yeah. I was going to say it was by happenstance, but I guess not, right? Because, God really has a plan for all of our lives. And it's
Yeah.
really about us kind of going through the different avenues to get to where we want to be. I would say, I grew up in Southeast DC, right? At that time, and probably still now, considered the worst part of DC. But we didn't see it that way. Being there, we had a lot of lessons. We did have a lot of trauma, but I think that the experiences that I had, at least, it really propelled me to even want more, to want to be different. And I would say I probably was different because I was kind of like the mother of the group always. I'm the oldest. I have a lot of siblings. And so I was always just thinking about the future and how I wanted my life to be different because we struggled so much. And so, just kind of doing that, I knew that my way out was going to be school. And I put everything. I was in everything in school. It was happening. I was there. And it was a way for me to, one, get out the house, but two, really improve my skill set. And so I'm a firm believer that you should be well-rounded. You should know how to do a little bit of everything. And I can't. I feel like I can do anything. You can put me in any setting, any workplace, any job, and I'm going to succeed because I have that type of mindset. Like, okay,
Yeah.
just teach me whatever, and I'm going to get it. But for me, I think just in general, I was always a helper, whether I wanted to be or, or not. And so my pathway into mental health was actually to help other kids not experience what I experienced in my senior year of high school.
Wow.
And so I kind of went into mental health not even knowing truly what that was all about, but understanding that I wanted to be a role model for kids like me to know that they can be whatever they want to be. And so I had a school counselor at the time. I think it was actually only when we got to 12th grade because she was new, but we had a school counselor that was very negative and actually swaying us from kind of going and doing the things that we was set out to do. And we were top of our class, right? And so we were applying to all these different schools and, you know, but she was like, oh, no, you know, you're not going to get into this school, or you need to just apply to that, you know, to
The
this
negative
school or
Nancy's.
this, you know. And so us, or me even, because it was a group of us, but me having that experience, I was like, whoa, one, why
Yeah.
would you, you know, why would you even be that negative to us kids? But then it's like, how many more of those people are out there that are swaying kids? Now, we had very high confidence. So really everything she was saying was going over our head. We wasn't even listening, right? Because we were those kids.
Right.
But what if we weren't?
Right.
What if we were kids who were on the fence, who weren't as confident, who, you know, had good grades but didn't have great grades? We would have allowed her to sway us not to apply to the schools that we wanted to go to. So for me, that stuck with me. And so because of that, I knew that I was going to go into school counseling. I was like, you know what, I'm
That's
going to make
great.
sure that nobody else has this experience. Now, what I didn't know was everything that came with school counseling, but it was a journey in itself. And so actually, um, for that, I did apply. You know, I only wanted to go to Penn State, honestly, even though I applied to all these schools. And that's the school I went to and graduated from. And so did my friends at that time. We all got into the school of choice that we wanted to go to. We all graduated from those schools, you know, all of them being top level schools and universities. And so for me, it was like, I want to make sure that I give that to other students, right? So yeah, so that's really what even positioned me to think about going into this realm, not fully even understanding about mental health at that time, but understanding that I wanted to be in a position to help mold the next generation of kids. And that's where I started. I started out as a school counselor. I got my undergrad in business, so that's a whole nother conversation. Business, I had a minor in psychology and international business, but then I got my master's in school counseling. And so, you know, it's been a journey. My goal when I first started was just to really be a role model and to help mold the youth. But that has transformed so much, right? I've been on that journey of school counseling. I have so many kids. You know, some of my kids now have graduated with their master's degree.
Yeah.
And they walked the same streets I did, right? They were from Southeast. You know, we had this stigma on us. And so for me, that is what I like to see, right? All of my hard work, because it was hard work,
Right. Right.
working with kids. But to see that pay off, to see that the seeds that I planted in the kids, along with their parents and all the other staff, that, you know, they take hold of that. I still have kids reaching out to me to this day, and they're adults with their own kids now. You know, and just saying, you know, just unknowing and how much I helped them, you know, during that time. So, you know, for me, it means the world. And to go into business, I started out with kids. I went back to my school that I worked with, one kid at a time. That's how I started Smile. And it just has evolved since then. You know, we work with schools. During the pandemic, that's when we really start focusing on corporations. We saw the need to get inside of corporations because we were at a point where our individual clients, because we do outpatient therapy, they were coming to us in drones needing short-term disability paperwork signed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, what is going on inside of these workplaces?
Yeah.
And I did the pivot, and I added that to our portfolio.
Which is great, because there's so many things. You talked about transference as far as what happened in your life, what happened to you as a student, and you didn't want that to happen to anyone else. So you were going to utilize what you experienced and restore forward. People say, give back, pay it forward. I like to say restore forward, because what you're doing is providing restorative tools to help someone move forward in the execution of who they are, who they were created to be. And I agree with you. First of all, I have to give it up because we are fellow alumni of Penn State University.
Yes, I did see that. I meant to say that.
And I meant to say that in the introduction, but forgot.
Yes, that's
and it's great to know that when there's a time to pivot, it didn't change your purpose. It didn't change your calling. All it did was shift the presentation of your calling. And that's what I had to learn for myself too. And I know that's what listeners do. It's, if your calling is one thing, it doesn't mean that shifts just because you're moving from school to corporate. Or you're moving from corporate to school. Because the audience that God wants you to reach is different.
Yeah, it's a evolution, and so I tell people that you may start in one place of your business and it may evolve, and so don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to evolve into something greater, right? Because I see this as yes, and we still work with schools and helping even their staff, work with the students. But it was like we needed to be in these bigger spaces to be able to impact even more people. And that also scares people, like, what? I gotta, we were used to doing this, and now it's kind of like, do I go here? Do I not? Go where you're needed.
Yes. Right. And there's space for all of us.
And it's so unfortunate that we've lived in this crab in a barrel mentality for so long. So even when I got started, people were like, what? They, what's that? Well, we already have an EAP, right? But I'm like, but your EAP not doing what we're doing. And so you have to own your services and what you bring to the table to know that there's space for you. Because our largest client is Microsoft. Now, Microsoft is a giant of a company, right?
Right.
Microsoft had an entire well-being team. Okay? But they still needed Smile. And this is what I try to tell even the companies that I work with. We bring something that no one brings. But you own that uniqueness, right? You have to be able to go into places like a Microsoft and say why you're different from the other companies that they're already working with. What is your unique factor? We are one of 3 wellness companies that Microsoft uses for all of their mental health and wellness.
Wonderful. That is huge, and I love it.
That's huge.
That's huge, because you know what you're also talking about is owning your authenticity.
Yeah.
Walking in your authenticity. And the only way you can walk in your authenticity is for you to understand who you are. What is your creative existence? And that's how these podcasts started, when I started with, being a defender of self-justice, of taking executive ownership of who we were created to be so that God's righteousness would move through. And then it shifted to, now that we know this, let's now soar courageously. Let's now go to different heights. Let's now recognize that there is something greater out there for us to do. And I love how you did that. and you're steadily doing that, and you're not just doing it for your company, you're also helping other businesses. You're also building up other entrepreneurs so that they can do this as well and own the space that God has created for them, because there is room. Some people
Yeah.
think that there's not room. I love the imagery of the crab in the barrel and everyone trying to claw to the top. And you don't need to claw. How about we just reach out our hands and help each other raise to the top?
Collaboration is key, right? And so,
Yes.
I'm a part of, the Bow Collective, as is Allegra, who you were, speaking about. And our mentality is collaboration over competition. We
Yes.
are going to go farther together. And so,
Yes.
how do we continue to really have that mindset so that we all can prosper, right?
Yes.
To get into some of these larger opportunities, we have to partner. We can't be the solo this, the solo that. I partner with small businesses to do a lot of my stuff, right? We do all different types of solutions still under the mental health and wellness umbrella, but it's not
Right.
my area of expertise. Well, I just bring someone in that is their area of expertise, right? And so that is also how we have to do things. And
Yes.
other people do it for me. They have, they're in different spaces and they may be executive leadership coach or something, but they know that their team needs that wellness piece. Well,
Yes.
they can call us up. Hey, Chrissy, I need you to do this for us. I need to sub you in doing this. How about if we had that mindset? How much more farther along will we be?
I don't think there would be a ceiling. There is no
There's
ceiling
no ceiling.
if we were to do that, when we do that. And I know you've been able to experience that. I've been able to experience that. Where I was last year is not where I am today. Also because of transformative thinking and being able to see things differently and to step out into a new space that I've not occupied before. And as you said, that I own, because I have a different message that's coming forth. And it's so important to do that. We're both in the lane of mental health, but
Yeah.
we're in different lanes within mental health, because you're in therapy, you do therapy and coaching, but I do coaching. I'm not, there've been people that's like, oh, you'd be a great therapist. Yeah, but that's not my lane. That's not my lane, and I know it and I own it. But there are other spaces of wellness that
Yeah.
I can come into, because health and wellness is really where my heart is now. And not saying it wasn't there before, but when situations presented itself and I needed to take that pivot, I did take that pivot. And I see you did too. You are an author, and you recently wrote, well, not recently wrote, but you recently put out, it's been published, The Refreshing Smile, a transformative self-care workbook. And you've talked about you wanting to be a change maker, because you are a change maker. So you talked about being a change maker and bringing change into corporations that also impact individuals, that also spread and transform businesses. So what is it? Well, let me ask it this way. How can those who pick up this workbook actually reset their mental wellness rhythms?
Yeah, so the Refreshing Smile, a transformative self care workbook, it is that. It is a workbook where, and just like you were speaking about earlier, it is a workbook where we educate on the 8 dimensions of whether you want to call it health, we call it self care.
Okay.
And not only educate them, but we evaluate where are you in those areas, right? Be honest with yourself. And it's for people to really have a good look at, wow, I'm not doing well taking care of myself. But then we don't leave you there. Then we help you to create a plan in each dimension.
Yeah.
And so with that workbook, we have been able to have self-care groups. You know, we utilize it during our wellness retreats. We use it during our workshops. We help people to really look at what area do you need help in most. Let's target that. And so we've had transformative conversations with people and eye-opening conversations because one, people don't realize that self-care is not one-dimensional.
Right.
So once they
Right.
even figure out, wow, all of these pieces are a part of self-care, that in itself opens their eyes. And then they can really use this book to help them improve their self-care so that then it can help them increase their capacity personally, their capacity professionally. And so when we do that for companies, now it's helping your employees to be more productive. Why? Because now we're giving them a blueprint on how to be better to themselves. So then they can be better for you, essentially, right? And for them
Yeah.
and for themselves. So that's really what this book is about. And so we're grateful that people are really taking heed to it. They're working through it. You know, we've created some series with some companies where we're going through each dimension. I mean, really helping to break down that through workshops and through, you know, them going through the book. And so we
Right.
use it in different capacities. And so, you know, people, they really need it. We are in a point where we are not taking good care of ourselves.
No. No.
And it is causing us not just productivity, it's causing us our lives, our
Yes.
livelihood. And so, how do we reset our mindset on what's important? How do we start prioritizing ourselves? So, that's really what this book helps people to be able to do.
That is so powerful because you actually just bring everything all together with how we started to talk, where you talk to the individual. So you're focusing on the individual, you're focusing on that executive, that entrepreneur, that person in management. You're focusing on schools, on how they actually how they help others as well. And so as you do the individual, then that individual is able to recognize that it's not just about what I eat or how I eat, it's how I live, it's what I do. And you said that it was, 8 dimensions of your self-care. And that's similar because I have 7 pillars of health. So they're all different. There's an alignment, but we have to get aligned with the different schematics of what health actually is. And once we do that, then we come into that group. And as we're in that group, we're able to expand. And as we're able to expand, now we're touching and reaching areas that are beyond insular, that are not isolated, that are now broader. And that is so amazing that we're able to do that. And this is what your company does. And so you're reaching and outsourcing to so many different places where you started with the one, but now it has expanded into, I would dare say that you are reaching thousands who would be able to reach hundreds of thousands. Because I go back to, there was a quote that Maya Angelou had said to Oprah Winfrey. And she said to her, you're never going to know your impact. And I'm not saying it verbatim, but it was, you're never going to know your impact because you're never going to know the lives of those you've touched. So you touch one, they touch another, they touch another, they touch another. Some people call it synchronicity. I call it God-ordained purposes. That you are on a plane that's soaring to another dimension, but you're not going on that plane by yourself.
Yeah.
And when you land, they're all going to go to different places, and they're landing in a grounded state because they now have tools, they now have information, they now have support in order to be cultural changers every place they go.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I love how you put that. Exactly. And I think that's the point for anyone, no matter what you do,
Yes.
right? Is what is your impact or what's your legacy going to be? How are people going to remember you, right? What are they going to remember
Yes.
you for? And so, for me, all of that's important.
I see that. And you know what? You talked about your retreats. You talked about being able to host these impactful retreats, and people can go to your website and they can see excerpts from that as well. So, what are some of the experiences that you're offering right now? You talked about the workbook. You have your retreats. Is there something else that we haven't talked about that help people to feel seen, safe, and supported?
Yeah. Well, we do wellness workshops. And so those are on a range of different topics. And those are really the preventative piece. And so for a lot of our companies that we work with, we're doing them monthly or quarterly, right? Or every other month so that we can provide the employees coping strategies and tools that they need to help with the things that they're
Yeah.
dealing with every day. And so that's, another offering. We do therapeutic safe space sessions. So think about that as a kind of like group therapy, but in the workplace setting. And it's a place to process. Sometimes we really need to process through what's going on, what's happening, what traumatic experience we just had, and how it's showing up for us. So that's another solution that we have. And just to kind of go a little deeper into our wellness retreats, we hear that it's an experience. It
Yes.
is a
Yes.
time where, and I just posted about it, but where you can really focus on the employee, the individual. It's a time where you can create a space for healing and recovery. When is the last time that we focused on that at a workplace retreat? Right? And
Yeah.
so people may think, well, we need to focus on productivity, but believe me, if you increase the
Yes.
wellness of your staff,
Your productivity will go
your
and rise.
productivity will rise. And that's how we have to help leaders change how they are doing things, right? And
Yes.
how they approach. And we make sure that our people are well and they're supported. They will make sure that the work gets done and they'll get done at the highest capacity. And so, that experience is inclusive of a lot of different things. That includes like a sound bath. When have you had a
Yes.
sound bath at a work retreat?
Come on now. Come on now.
Right?
To bring wellness. Sound baths are wonderful.
It's wonderful to regulate that nervous system, to minimize that anxiety that people are
Yes.
having, and people have a lot of anxiety right now, right?
Yes.
And so that is kind of one piece. Our self-care groups, our safe space sessions that we have within that. We also have had candle making and talking about, or essential oil making, where we really educate people on how essential oils actually improve your mental health.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it's
Yes.
inclusive. It's inclusive. And of course, we can bring in strategy and team building and all of those things. But we like to focus on the people, that person first, right? And wellness. How do we really help them to get in a space where they can even hear you and all the things that you want them to be able to do as it relates to work? And so that's really what that refreshing smile experience for our wellness retreats are about. So we're really excited about that. And then we have other solutions, conflict resolution, mediation services, because we're human and we have conflict and that affects the workplace.
It's
So
real.
it's real, yeah, it's real, right? And so we have real deal mediation services for individuals, and usually it's kind of groups, within the
Yeah.
corporation.
Yeah.
And so that's another offering. And then of course we have our mental health app, the Refreshing Smile mental health app and coaching community that is coming soon. So we're really excited about that. And that's going to be a collection of many wellness workshops. So we do full
Oh,
out,
that's great.
1 hour workshops for corporations, but
Mm-hmm.
we're putting that into bite size,
Yeah.
so that people can have access to that. Because what we also find is that even though we go into corporations doing the workshops, we realize that we're competing with job duties.
Yeah.
So whether they have a client meeting, even though they want to attend all of our workshops, they can't attend all the time. So
Yeah.
how do you, support them on the go?
Oh,
We
I
got to
love
put it
that.
in the app,
You have to
right?
put that. That is so great. You are creative. You are an innovator. You are a strategist. So even though you, how to put this in words, your sound baths, listening to sound baths, using your hands to create candles and to build the essential oils that are going to be healthy for you, that you'll be able to smell, that you'll be able to use on your body, that you'll be able to infuse maybe with the candle or
Yep.
something else. So you're doing that, and that is a strategy of wellness because that's bringing a solution to create of how we can walk in our wholeness, which we are deserving of and how
Yeah.
we're actually worthy of. I love the app. The app is giving you another strategy to be able to do things on the go, to have wellness on the go. I love that. Wellness on the go because we have to move with wisdom and
Yeah.
understanding that there are always going to be some tasks and responsibilities that we're going to have to execute. So what can we do in the space? One of the things I always do and give to my partners that I work with is breathing, different breathing techniques, because it doesn't take much to breathe, to pause. And people might think you might have to do, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You can do 30 seconds if that's all you have,
Yep.
because that gives you a pause and it allows you to be realigned with what your focus is so that you
Yep.
can move forward and do and execute what you're supposed to be doing. So, mental wellness, doing that in such a meaningful way is so impactful. And how you bring it to the table is empowering. So I thank you for that. And I hope that our audience sees it and feels it and embraces it as a conversation because that's where enlightenment comes. And that's where encouragement rises. And that's where empowerment soars. So if you are a business leader and resonate with the things that you were saying and they want to get connected to you, what is the first step of being able to partner with you?
Yeah, so they can go to our website and fill out a form, so that we can reach out. They can connect with me on LinkedIn, through Christy Venable. We also are on LinkedIn as Smile Therapy Services. We're on Instagram as Smile Therapy LLC. We're on Facebook, right? Smile Therapy Services. So we're on all the socials. Connect with us, whether it's through our website, whether it's through LinkedIn, which a lot of our connects kind of come from because I'm, on there heavy. But that would be the first step. Really go there, connect, get a consultation so that we can really see how your workplace needs support, right? We can do some strategy and give you some recommendations on how we can best support you. So that's really how they can start getting connected. And if they want to see more about the app, they can go to the refreshingsmile.com.
That is wonderful. Thank you for being a trailblazer in this space of mental health wellness, being that strategist and bringing Smile, your Smile therapy services to corporations and schools so that there is personal change, there is community change, there is family change, because that's all important.
Yeah.
So thank you for all of that.
Yes, thank you.
So, as we conclude this conversation today, I just encourage you to be in creation, to recognize that in creation there is the fullness of life, understanding that in creation there is the beauty of life, that God created us in His image and in His likeness so that we would be able to walk in His wisdom, to walk through her justice, to walk through her love, to be nurtured by guidance. And to soar as eagles, there is no ceiling that we cannot expand. And being a Shinnecock Indian, I love the word Mamoe Nene, we move together. So let's move together and soar courageously. Thank you. See you next time. This podcast is produced by Ronald S. Rudisil and Iona R. Rudisil. Each episode of this podcast will be posted in video version on our YouTube channel, Iona Speaks About Soaring Courageously. You can connect with me on social media. On Instagram, it's Iona SPKS_Soaring Courageously. And on both LinkedIn and Facebook, it's Iona R. Rudisil. If you like this podcast, tell a friend, tell your family, and please like, rate, review, and subscribe. And most of all, keep soaring courageously.